I was emptying my older brother's old blazer before donating it when I found a dry cleaning ticket, date of the night. He swore he was in Chicago. The blazer belonged to Everett Cole, who had been dead 4 years. I recognized the ticket because the cleaner, Sunview Cleaners, was 3 blocks from my old house in Fort Collins, Colorado. The date was September of 2005, the same night my sister-in-law accused my wife of ruining her marriage. Everett had told me he was at a trade show in Illinois. The ticket said his charcoal blazer and one woman's cream jacket were dropped off in Fort Collins at 8:40 that evening. My name is Patrick Cole. I was 66 when I found it, retired from calibrating commercial scales at warehouses, feed mills, and trucking terminals. I spent my working life checking whether what people believed weighed 10 pounds actually weighed 10 pounds. The ticket had one handwritten note near the bottom: replace loose pearl button on jacket. Pick up by M. I knew Everett's blazer. I also knew the cream jacket. It belonged to my wife, Susan. She had worn it to my niece's engagement dinner the week before everything in our family broke apart. I stood in the bedroom holding that faded ticket and remembered the version of events I had believed for almost 20 years. Everett was away. Susan was home. My sister-in-law, Claire, came to our house crying and accused Susan of telling Everett something private. By the end of the week, Claire had moved out. Everett blamed Susan for interfering. Susan denied betraying anyone, but refused to explain what she had supposedly said. I took my brother's side. That decision damaged my marriage for years. Now, the dry cleaning ticket placed Everett and Susan's clothes together in our town on the exact night. He claimed to be hundreds of miles away, and somebody identified only as M had picked him up. For the first time, I wondered whether Susan had been protecting Everett from something much worse than I ever knew. Everett was 3 years older than me and better at almost everything people noticed. He was louder, quicker, more charming. I was the one who remembered appointments and carried jumper cables. He worked in regional sales for a building supply company. I serviced industrial scales, which meant our careers crossed occasionally, but never enough to compete. Claire married Everett in the early 80s. Susan and Claire became close later, not best friends. More like women who understood each other because they had married brothers who thought loyalty solved every problem. In 2005, Everett and Claire's marriage was visibly strained. Claire had started sleeping in the guest room. Everett claimed she was angry because he wanted to take a promotion that involved more travel. Susan told me it was not my business. I accepted that because I trusted Everett. That fall, he began telling me Claire was becoming suspicious. She thinks every late meeting means something, he said. I told him, then show her your calendar and let her get over it. Susan heard me once and said, maybe she isn't asking for a calendar. I snapped back, what is that supposed to mean? She said, nothing. That was one of several conversations that looked different after I found the ticket. I checked Susan's old planner. On the night of the dry cleaning drop-off, she had written only 2 words. Dinner canceled. I remembered that. We were supposed to meet friends at a Mexican restaurant. Susan called me at work and said Claire needed her. I came home angry because she would not explain. She arrived near midnight. The cream jacket was gone. I asked where it was. She said she spilled coffee on it and left it with Claire to clean. That was believable enough that I never questioned it again. Now I knew it had gone to Sunview Cleaners with Everett's blazer. I called Claire. She was 71 and living outside Loveland. When I mentioned the ticket, she was silent. Then she asked, was the pearl button written on it? Yes. She exhaled. That was mine. The jacket belonged to Susan. No, Pat. Claire paused. She lent it to me that night. Claire asked me to come over. She still had the matching pearl button, not sewn onto anything, just sitting in a small envelope inside a kitchen drawer. She placed it on the table between us. Susan gave me her jacket because mine was torn, she said. Torn how? I caught the sleeve on Everett's car door. That detail came from the argument I had never known occurred. Claire had followed Everett from his office, not because she believed he was having an affair, because she believed he was preparing to leave her. She had found brochures for apartments in Denver and a printed transfer request from his company. Everett told me later the transfer was only a possibility. Claire believed he had already decided. She followed him to a restaurant parking lot in Fort Collins. Susan was there. That made my stomach tighten. Why was my wife meeting Everett? Claire looked at me carefully. She was trying to stop him. Everett had called Susan earlier that afternoon. He admitted he planned to accept the Denver transfer and separate from Claire after the engagement party for their daughter. He had not told Claire. He wanted Susan to help keep things calm until he could leave cleanly. Susan refused. She told him Claire deserved the truth. Then she called Claire herself. That was why Claire followed him. The three of them argued beside Everett's car. Claire grabbed the door as Everett tried to leave. Her jacket tore badly. Susan gave her the cream one because Claire was shaking and embarrassed. What happened to Everett's blazer? Coffee, Claire said. I threw a cup. I stared at her. On him. At the car. Mostly. The blazer and Susan's jacket went to the cleaner afterward. Everett dropped them off because Susan drove Claire home. That answered where he had really been. He had lied about Chicago. He had been in Fort Collins, secretly planning how to leave his marriage. For a few minutes, the story fit everything I feared. Then Claire said, "But that isn't why Susan kept it from you." I looked at the ticket. Everett had betrayed Claire. Susan knew, and she had still let me spend years blaming her for their breakup. I was angry enough that I drove past my own house before realizing it. Everett had lied. Susan had lied. Claire had known more than she told me. For years, I remember myself as the one person standing outside the mess. The ticket proved I had only been outside because they put me there. I went through Everett's blazer again. No other mystery. No letter. No hidden confession. Just an old cough drop in one pocket and the cleaner's ticket in another. That mattered. The ticket had survived because Everett apparently forgot it, not because anyone intended me to find it. I called the cleaning shop. Sunview had changed owners, but the new owner kept some older order books because his aunt had run the place before him. He found the entry. Charcoal blazer. Cream women's jacket. Pearl button repair. Then a pickup notation. M. Cole. I did not know any M. Cole connected to us. Neither did Claire. That single letter bothered me because the family name made coincidence unlikely. I checked my mother's old address book. No answer. Then Susan's. On a page near the back was a name I had not thought about in years. Miriam Cole. Our mother. She was 80 at the time. I remembered her being sick that fall, which was why I had assumed she knew nothing about Everett and Claire. Apparently, she had known enough to pick up the clothes. Claire confirmed it reluctantly. Susan called your mom. I felt another wave of disbelief. My mother knew? Yes. Before I did? Yes. Why? Claire rubbed the edge of the envelope, holding the pearl button. Because Susan thought your mother was the only person Everett might listen to. My mother had always defended Everett. He was the son who called every Sunday, the one who fixed her porch light without being asked. Susan believed that if Miriam told him he was behaving badly, he might reconsider. Miriam agreed to meet him. That explained the M on the ticket. She picked up the clothes because Susan did not want Claire walking into the cleaner in a torn jacket, and Everett refused to go back. But one detail still did not fit. The cream jacket's pearl button was repaired. Claire still had the missing pearl. The cleaner had sewn on a different one. And according to the ticket, Susan specifically asked him not to match it exactly. The notation was small enough that I had overlooked it the first time. Use plain pearl. Do not match original. I asked Claire why Susan would request that. She did not know. That led me back to old photographs. At my niece's engagement dinner, Susan wore the cream jacket with 4 pearl buttons. A family Christmas photograph 3 months later showed only 3 original pearls. The lower button was plain and slightly smaller. Susan kept wearing the jacket after the crisis. She never replaced the mismatched button. I found the jacket itself in a garment bag at the back of my closet. I had not donated Susan's clothes after she died. I told people I was waiting until I was ready. Mostly, I forgot they were there. The lower button was still wrong. Inside the pocket, I found nothing except a grocery list. But holding the jacket brought back a conversation. A week after Claire moved out, I asked Susan why she was being cold toward Everett. She said, because he wants everyone else to pay for a decision he made. I thought she meant the promotion. I told her Everett had worked hard for that opportunity. Then I said something worse. If Claire can't support him, maybe she's the one ending the marriage. Susan stared at me for several seconds. You really believe that? Yes, I did. At the time, loyalty to Everett felt like loyalty to my family. I called Claire. Did Susan ever tell you why she left that odd button? Claire was quiet. Then she said, your mother told her to. That sounded strange enough that I nearly laughed. Claire explained. When Miriam picked up the clothes, the cleaner offered to wait until a better button could be ordered. Susan said no. Miriam reportedly told her, leave it different. Somebody should remember this night wasn't ordinary. The mismatched button was not decoration. It was a marker. A quiet record of the night, Everett tried to leave without telling his wife. Susan chose to keep wearing it. And still, she never explained it to me. That was the part one could not forgive yet. I found the reason in my mother's old appointment calendar. After Miriam died, I had taken a small box of her papers and never sorted them. The week after the parking lot confrontation, she had written, Everett, talk at noon. Pat not yet. 2 days later. Susan says Pat will choose Everett if pushed now. That sentence made me sit down. I had spent years believing Susan withheld the truth because she was protecting Claire's privacy. She was also managing me. I did not like that distinction. I called my sister, Lydia. She was the only surviving person who might have known what Mom meant. Lydia remembered the family tension. Mom talked to Everett, she said. Did it work? Depends. Everett did not move to Denver. He withdrew the transfer request. He also did not repair his marriage immediately. Claire moved into an apartment for 6 months. They attended counseling. Eventually, she came home. I had always believed Everett gave up Denver because the company restructured the position. That was his story. It was false. Miriam persuaded him to stay and face the damage before deciding where to live. What does that have to do with me? I asked. Lydia sighed. You made him a promise. I remembered it after she reminded me. A month before the crisis, Everett told me Claire might oppose a promotion. I said, if she makes you choose between your marriage and your future, I'm on your side. I meant it as encouragement. Everett heard permission. Susan heard danger. If she told me he had secretly planned to leave before speaking honestly with Claire, I would have been forced to choose between a brother I had already promised to support and a truth that made that support harder. She thought you'd double down, Lydia said. Maybe I wouldn't have. Maybe. That irritated me because I could hear the same doubt Susan must have had. I was not cruel. I was stubborn. When I made a loyalty promise, I treated changing my mind like weakness. Susan knew that. So did Everett. The secret was not only about protecting Claire. It was about preventing me from becoming part of Everett's excuse. That was the second truth I had missed for almost 20 years. Susan had not simply kept Everett's betrayal from me. She believed my promise to him was helping him avoid responsibility. If I learned everything in the middle of the crisis, she thought I would offend him before I had time to understand what he had done. That does not mean she was right. I still believe I deserve the truth. But I understood the trap. Everett knew I had told him I would stand beside him. He used that certainty, not maliciously, fearfully. He wanted one person who would say he was not wrong. Susan refused to give him that. Then she refused to let me give it to him, too. I called Claire again. Why didn't anyone tell me afterward? She answered honestly. At first, Susan planned to. When? After counseling started. What changed? You and Everett. I remember that period. Everett and I had our own fight. He accused me of judging Claire. I accused him of letting everyone blame me for something I did not understand. We stopped speaking for nearly a year. I thought our break happened because Susan poisoned things between us. In reality, Everett pulled away because he was ashamed. He knew I had defended him without knowing the truth. Claire said, "He couldn't stand telling you that your loyalty had made it easier for him to be a coward." The word was harsh. It was also Everett's word, not hers. He apparently used it in counseling. Susan saw that our relationship was already damaged, telling me everything might have turned shame into permanent estrangement. So she waited. Then the longer she waited, the harder confession became. By the time Everett and I started speaking again, years had passed. The lie had become part of the family history. That was Susan's mistake. Not one night of secrecy. Years of deciding I was better off with a simpler version. I looked at the dry cleaning ticket again. MCO, plain pearl, do not match original. The whole family crisis reduced to ordinary laundry instructions. I asked Claire one final question. Did Everett ever want the blazer back? She smiled faintly. He wore for years. That surprised me. The charcoal blazer I was holding had been cleaned after the parking lot argument, then returned to him. The ticket stayed in the inside pocket because Miriam picked up both garments, handed Everett his blazer, and apparently never removed the claim stub. After Everett died, Claire gave me several of his jackets. I kept the charcoal one because it fit me. I wore it twice. That unsettled me. For 2 evenings, I had walked around inside a jacket, carrying proof of the lie, and never felt the paper in the hidden ticket pocket. Claire said, Everett hated that blazer. Then why keep it? He said he deserved to remember. That sounded like something Susan might have approved of. I asked whether their marriage recovered. Claire considered her answer. We became more honest. That isn't what I asked. I know. They stayed together. Some years were good. Some were careful. Claire said Everett became less charming after 2005, which she meant as a compliment. He stopped explaining himself so quickly. He listened longer. They never returned to what they had been. Maybe that was the point. I called Lydia and apologized for the years I had repeated Everett's version of the story like it was fact. Then I sat alone with Susan's cream jacket. The mismatched pearl button was small. I must have looked at it hundreds of times without seeing it. That felt familiar. Susan had done something I still disliked. She decided which truth I could handle. She protected Claire. She protected Everett from using me as cover. She protected my relationship with my brother by keeping me ignorant. And in doing that, she damaged something between us too. There is no clean way to balance those choices. I know only that if she had told me then, I might have reacted exactly as she feared. I also know she should have trusted me enough to risk finding out. Both are true. The dry cleaning ticket stopped feeling like proof of an affair. It became proof of something harder. A family can stay loyal to one another and still lie in the name of that loyalty. I donated Everett's other clothes. I kept the charcoal blazer. Not because I planned to wear it. I took it to Sunview Cleaners instead. The current owner recognized the old ticket format when I showed it to him. Ancient history, he said. Feels recent to me. I asked him to clean the blazer and leave the inside ticket pocket exactly as it was. Then I brought Susan's cream jacket. I did not have it cleaned. I only asked whether the odd pearl button could be replaced with something closer to the originals. He said yes. I told him no. I finally understood why Miriam had chosen the wrong one on purpose. Not to punish anyone. Not to create evidence. To keep one small part of that night from being polished into a better story. When I picked up Everett's blazer, the new claim ticket was clipped to the old one. For a second, I considered throwing the old ticket away. Instead, I removed it and put it in an envelope with a photograph of Everett, Susan, Claire, and me from a summer cookout years before the trouble started. We all looked certain of one another. I keep the envelope in my desk. The blazer went to my nephew, Everett's son. I told him enough of the story that he understood why I was giving it to him. He ran his hand over the lapel and said, Dad always looked uncomfortable in this thing. He probably was. Susan's cream jacket stayed with me. It hangs in the hall closet now. The mismatched pearl catches light differently from the others. For years, I thought a family stayed together because people stood firmly on the right side. Everett taught me what certainty can excuse. Susan taught me what protection can cost. I wish she had told me the truth. I wish I had made it easier for her to believe I could hear it. Neither wish cancels the other. Sometimes I take the old dry cleaning ticket from the envelope. The paper has gone soft along the folds. Everett's blazer, Susan's jacket, Miriam's initial, one wrong pearl button. Nothing on it looks important. That is probably why it survived. The lie was never hidden in some secret place. It rode for 20 years inside an ordinary jacket, waiting for someone to finally check the pocket.